ECN, Word of God to the world.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on here today with Senator Diane Watson, and my name is Jerry Jones, and the name of our program is called To Be Informed. To Be Informed. And we're going to talk a little bit about the grants and nonprofits. We're going to talk about a lot of information that we can bring to you that can help you to start your nonprofit and being able to write the grants as well. But first of all, I want to give you a little bit of background about the person I'm getting ready to introduce you to. First off, it was Senator Diane Watson and I met back in 1995, 96 in that area, and she became ambassador for Micronesia, and we started working with her, and that's how I got into grant writing. And at that time, she's been been a senator for the state of California, and now she's semi-retired, but she's been helpful in California in a lot of administrative work that she's done here, and I want to introduce her today so that she can be able to bring forth a little bit of information about some of the things she's been privy to with the nonprofit and how we'll be able to do some things in the future. This is Senator Diane Watson.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I appreciate this opportunity. There are so many good organizations out there in the public that are concerned about health, concerned about education, concerned about our children and raising them properly, concerned about eliminating as much crime, reducing the risk that the average American might have in their own neighborhood, in their own communities. And so there are many, many different grants that come out of our state government and also out of our federal government. And so what you need is an expert grant writer who will tell you how to focus and what organization you should focus on when you write your grants. They put out an RFP, and that's a request for a proposal. So what you want to do is go to the library, find out what organizational money is being given by your local government, your state government, or your federal government. And then you want to focus on what you want to do. So let me say it's a grant for women's health. What is your goal writing a grant? Now, are you going to want that money to improve women's health, to get more women out there to being physically checked annually for breast cancer, for any other kind of condition that a woman might have? And as you know, the big issue is now whether hospitals can provide and request to have an abortion. This is what's going on as we speak. Now, there are many hospitals that will not perform them, particularly the religious hospitals, the Catholic hospitals. You understand that. So be sure when you are writing a grant that you understand the grantor and the grantee and what they will fund and what they will not fund. So when you have a small business and you want to focus on, say, getting young people in there to buy the clothing that teenagers should wear. Now, be sure that your grant is written focusing on the clothing industry, if that's what you're interested. If it's an educational project, be sure your grant focuses on the state and their allocation of funds for various programs. And so what you have to do is understand why you are writing your grant. What is your mindset? What would you like to see funded? What would be the results of your project and its funding? And if it's a 501c3 grant, that's nonprofit. You're not going to make $1 zillion off of it. because it's a nonprofit organization and you're writing for a grant to be able to pay the cost of hiring staff, to have a facility, an office, and to manufacture or to teach or whatever it might be, the subject area might be. You want to be sure that you know what are the prohibitions in the grants that you write for. And you need to have someone that is skilled. The first paragraph should go right to what you want to achieve. The second paragraph can do some explaining about your programs. And the third paragraph should be what the financial needs are that this grantor would want to fund. So grant writing is really an art, but you must, as the grantee, understand what it is you want, what is your mindset, what are the risks that you're taking, but think in a very positive way. And be sure you write your grant according to the provisions in the request. And be sure you keep your eye on what you want as results of being granted that money. What are the positive results of being given the money and being able to achieve your project, your program, and know what category the nonprofit agency is in. 501c3, 501c4, and other numbers means that they will only grant the money based on, and it's got to be nonprofit. So, as you get started, think about what it is you want to do. You want to start up a small business in a community, then what's your first step? What action will you take? Is the community where you start up really in need? Is this something they would be interested in? And so these things need to be planned out well. And then you seek the grants that will fund in those communities in that state. Federal money for education comes from the feds into the State Department of Education in your state, and then it's allocated out to the districts that want to perform this particular project. So, A, know what you want to achieve. B, know how you ask for those monies. And C, be sure you have an outcome that will meet the request as you have presented to the grantors.
Yeah, well, Senator, one of the other things that I find that most of the people, they want to get grants, but they have not gotten their 501c3. And that's mandatory, because in order to be able to get any type of grants from the government or from the state, from corporations, funding foundation, or private individual, you need to be able to have that 501c3. And it takes roughly, from concept to completion, we're looking at probably in the avenue of 3 to 4 weeks in getting that 501c3 in place. And grants could take up to 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what grant it is, how big the volume is, how much money is being allocated, who's giving out the money. And then you want to have your needs statements, your goals, your methodology, your budget justification, your narrative, your appendix, your geographic, personnel, and any collaboration documents that you can have to make that grant be stronger as to what you're doing. There's a lot of grants out there, and there's a lot of grants that are out there from the government, from state, and then there's a lot from corporations, funding foundation, and private philanthropy. Now, the ones from the government and state, those are taxpayers. They're very sticky about the money that they give out, and you have to be able to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Now, with the corporations, funding foundation, and private individual, those are shareholders. They go in the boardroom, they make a decision to give you some money, and based on how much money, it's less money than you're going to get from the state. But one of the things that you can rely on, it might be not be a lot of money, but they're going to be able to help you in some kind of way, because they get a physical tax write-off at the end of the year for that money that they give you. So all I'm saying Now, as you have been explained by Senator Diane Watson, you have to have the 501c3 in place. You have to get a good grant writer. You need to have a good inquiry letter. You have to follow through with the people that you're going to go after the grants for. It's a process, and if you're not willing to work the process, don't waste your time getting involved in it. But if you're going to do it correctly with a good developmental officer and being able to do this like you're doing a full-time job. Now it will make sense to you and it'll be able to work for you.
I think you said it pretty much all. And it's a collaboration.
Right.
It's a process.
Right.
And I'm glad you mentioned the time it takes.
Right.
And you have to register your 501c3 or whatever the number is in the category that you are aiming for.
Exactly.
And you have to register it with your state.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a little cost to it. It varies from state to state.
Yes, ma'am.
So you really need to think it through before you decide to write a grant, and find out what agencies in government are seeking projects and are willing to fund them. So I think you laid out really splendidly the process one has to go through and what has to be considered.
A lot of times, this is some valuable information. A lot of people that's come out of prison, that's been incarcerated. Once you have a 501c3, it is not about your incarceration. It's about how well you work the program to help others that have in the same similar situation that you came out of. So a lot of people say, well, if I got a felony, can I still get a 501c3? Yes, you can get a 501c3, but you need to work it just like you were doing a job and go after those things, because whatever incarceration program that you got in there, you can help somebody else not to get in there and be able to help in the community as well.
Well, yes. How do we move forward? How do we lift society? And how do we reduce the risk that there are out there? So when you are writing for a grant, be sure that you know as much about that grant and what's going to be expected for you, and is it timely? And as you know, the President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, is looking at our environment at the time.
Right.
Do you want to do an environmental grant? So it would be good to read what he is proposing to Congress at the current time, and you can look it up on social media. And there are many ways that you can find out what he is searching for. As you know, there's climate change. That's a big issue today.
I recognize that.
And there are those who deny that the climate is changing. But we go for the facts. We go for the truth. So you need to do. And Wikipedia can give you a lot of information. And find out about climate change and see what is being done within Washington, D.C. that will have a positive effect on the climate. I heard something on the radio today that they talked about earth movement, earthquakes. And you know, we're prime in the state of California for earthquakes. There are some that believe every 19 years we have the earth shifting, and the border that was California will be Arizona. So environmental protection is really the sensitive issue today. Others might deny it, but how do we protect this environment in which we live? And human beings have a lot of impact on the environment where they live. So be sure that your mind is concentrating on what is timely, what does it take to meet the goals and the objections of your grant, and what do you see? How are you looking forward? And we say now, progressively. How do you have to look progressively to obtain what you'd like to obtain? If you do 501c3, it's nonprofit.
Right.
But there are other categories you can go after where you can make a profit.
Exactly.
That is your decision.
Yeah. One of the things I want to bring forward is the Veterans Administration. We're finding out a lot of the vets right now are getting into homeless shelters, and people are putting up a lot of housing for veterans all over the country. And there's a lot of money out there for the veterans in the homeless shelter. Not necessarily just veterans, but homeless people, period. And I'd like to see more people going after some of these shelters, food programs that they're aware of, open up different pantries, and then going after some of the things that they're doing for their foundation. There's a lot of people out there in upscale healthcare that needs to have helping senior citizens, because right now we got 80 million people turning, 65 years or older, and they need help.
Sure.
And so,
well, we have a mayor that's very in tune with the homeless issue, and as you know, we have a large homeless population. People, say in the Midwest and the East, come out to Los Angeles because we're on the coast, and they hear that you can run on the sand at the ocean's edge 365 days a year. That's our climate.
Right.
We're really desert
Right.
and all. And so many people come out here for that reason. A lot of people come out seeking something that they can't get in their own home communities.
Right.
And you have to be sure that the reasons you come can benefit you and lift you up. And so we have a whole lot of, it's shameful that we have a whole lot of veterans that are homeless.
Right.
And so that is something that our city council is looking at now. On the federal level, the person in charge of our military retirees was let go because we did not have a plan for those who fought in foreign places and they come home and they no longer have a home, they no longer have family, they're injured in some way, and I've seen them bring a person out of the hospital and just throw him downtown and just leave him there on the streets. Well, we have a military that is willing to fight for the liberty that we enjoy here in the United States of America. Why should we allow any veteran to be homeless? There is more wealth in this city than many other places in our United States.
Exactly.
We have to bring those people who have wealth together to solve this problem. We should be solution-oriented and not looking at the problems we have, but what are the solutions for those problems? And certainly, we need to have a solution for our veterans who have gone and fought in foreign wars. And we're trying to stay out of a war in other countries, on other shoulders.
Right.
And as you know, we were doing well until 9/11, and we were attacked by an enemy who says, let's kill them on their own turf. Let's destroy them on their own turf. And as you know, we sent troops, Second World War, to Europe to fight the Germans,
Right.
and we sent troops to fight the Japanese.
Right.
But we haven't done that since then. Oh, we have troops in places like Iraq and Iran, and we're there to train them how to fight for their own goals. So I get back to our veterans who've been willing to go over and at the risk of losing their own lives.
Yes.
And so when they come back home, we need to treat them with great attention to fulfill their needs, to repair their families because they've been away, and many of them come back injured. And so we need to treat them like we do our president and the people in Congress, okay, and I was a member of Congress, the people in elected office.
Right.
And so why should any veteran suffer on our streets without a home?
One of the things that I have noticed, Senator, last month, Obama released 42 people out of the prison system. And what I find out, there's certainly a lot of injustice in this prison system that we're working with, because certain people got certain crimes and others got other crimes. But what I do feel that if you paid your dues to society and it was a nonviolent crime that you were involved in, why are they held in a position of not being able to vote when the president has already said shouldn't be constitutional where they can't vote because you've paid for it. Now, if it's a violent crime, it should be under another regime. But under non-violent crimes, I can't see why that they're still putting people with felonies that they can't be able to vote. And I think it's unconstitutional. I think somebody needs to step up to the plate.
Well, that's the reason why you can amend a law or you can write a new law. And we have to address our decision-making and our look to the future to those who have that same kind of attitude that we can do better. And if a person goes to prison for whatever the non-violent crime, why are you denying him a chance, or her, a chance to vote and to move towards those people who will uplift society and not destroy it? And the longer people stay in, of course you have to pay for your crimes. We understand that.
Yeah, that's true.
But you ought to be trained while you're incarcerated, unless you are guilty of a crime that could lead to death or whatever.
Right.
But every day you ought to be required to go to school, to have a teacher in there. Because one of my first bills when I was in the Senate came about after visiting all of these youth authority facilities. And I found that they would throw them a book and you educate yourself, but you also need someone who can guide you through that education. So a bottom line for me is that every person who has served their time has a right to vote, with a few exceptions.
Right.
And it's voting that has made this country, United States of America, the most progressive nation on the continent, in this country. And so we all have a right to choose our own leaders. That's what makes us different from a monarchy.
One of the other things that I really want to talk about in this program that I think is most advantageous to the community is that I feel that we see an influx of major Fortune 500 companies that, if we look at Trevina, when Trevina had that serious problem down there in Louisiana and New Orleans, they asked a lot of people to stop sending the money down there. But here's what I'm looking at, and I have a real problem with this. Why is it that we're like Walmart? Walmart's got 115, 200 stores. They get $1 million a day out of these stores from low-income people, but they give out $60 million a year to the same repetitive folks that they give every year.
Do you know that Walmart is the biggest consumer operation on this planet? And
no, I didn't know that.
Yes, and they did not allow unionization.
Okay.
And so that's the reason why the prices, were so low. But unless you can have a voice for the people who work for you, so they can have a livable wage, and we're now talking about $13 to $15 an hour, and it's being challenged in many states.
Right.
And Walmart comes out of the South, and what they did prior to their agreement to let some unionization take place is that they would hire people and work them under the amount of, 40-hour a week is pretty much the standard. And they would hire them and let them work maybe 5 to 8 hours so they don't have to pay the benefits.
Right.
And that's the reason why they could have those low prices.
Right.
But in the United States of America, we should do better than that. We should bring everyone into middle class.
Right.
We should be able to lift the people at the bottom and at least put them into the middle. And that's based on wages. That's based on having a good education. And I'm not saying you have to go on to college, but in today's world,
Yes.
Technology is demanded
Right.
at every level,
Right.
so it would be good for you to go on to college.
Right, exactly.
But if you want a job so you can support your family, your lifestyle, your loved ones, then you have to have a minimum wage that will allow you to give you food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
Those are demands that, those are your rights, your human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you do it when you're working
Below
for
standard.
$7 an hour,
Yeah.
and you're not working the hours that can give you a little to lift you up, a little money to lift you up and put you into the middle class? We're always going to have our lower classes, our underserved classes, but it's our government that can lift them up and provide benefits to them.
Right.
The poor will always be with
us, yes.
And for one reason or another, it's not because people don't want to work. People might not have the skills.
Exactly.
They might not have the knowledge.
I don't feel that that you can eradicate this situation by no means, but I think, like you said, the government can make it so that they can raise it, so they can be brought up into the standard of what they need.
You're not going to be able to eradicate it
Right.
100%.
Right.
But at least you can address the needs of the underclass and find why they are stuck in that class. And the United States of America should be trying to lift all of its people, whether they're here legally or not. If they're working here, and let me give you really a look backwards. As you know, when Christopher Columbus was sailing, and he was going where? Where was he going? What was he looking for?
No.
The Spice Islands.
Exactly.
And so there was a time when they thought the earth was flat.
Exactly.
And so here was the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Yeah, right.
And they came and they hit this body of land. And guess what? There were people looking at them around the trees. And what did he say? India. They did not know that that land was not India. That is the reason why here in California, we call them Native Americans, because there were people already on this continent.
Before they got it.
Yes. And so those who came here and found out in the South you could grow plants such as cotton and other vegetables and so on. But when those who were from the Northern Europeans, from Italy or whatever, on your way to India, and they ran into this land, well, when they bent over to plant their crops, what happened? The sun on the back of their necks caused their necks to turn red. So the planters had to find a people who had melanin in the skin and could withstand the heat, the sun.
Exactly.
So where did they go? They went to the continent of Africa. And I want you to know, every single human being on this globe came out of Africa. Land masses had broken up and so on.
Right.
So they brought people over as slaves, and they chained them. And they would bring them off the continent, pretty much about 6 nations on the continent of Africa.
Right.
The people were taken against their will. And there's an island called Gorée Island, or Ile de Gorée. And that's where they would stack human beings like you would lumber in dungeons and wait for the next ship to come around.
I saw that.
Yes. And people chose death.
Right.
They were all chained, and over 300 million were taken off the continent during that period of time. Well, they were brought over to work on the plantations. Now, my name is Watson. I'm sure that within the Central Republic of Africa, that's where I trace my line to,
Right.
that there was no Watson. So I went to London and found my crest and clan. It's Scotch-Irish. Now look at me. You see, so what happened was these people were brought over and they were miscegenated. They, the landowner would come in and impregnate one of the slave women, and they would sell the husband and the wife to different plantations, and then the children to different ones. And so many of the slaves that were brought over to work the plantation could not read or write.
Right.
And so to be learned could cost you your life.
Yeah, I read some of that.
Yes. So you want to know why it's difficult for a lot of people to get the jobs they need to take care of their loved ones, because they were not learned. And so, you know, 1965, we passed the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
And so before that, you know, you could not go into schools. You could not be really learned. There was segregation.
Right, exactly.
So a lot of that has to do with the history of our country and our people. But now that we have a president that looks like you and I, and he knows that the way to move up is to have a good education. And as they used to say in the olden days, to be learned.
Exactly.
Yes, the more you know, the higher you go.
Right.
And so we have a president now
I'm going to use that.
that is being demonized.
Right.
He's been the most criticized. He's been attacked only because he has my blood and theirs. And I would tell them in my caucus, I said, the same blood that runs through my veins runs through his, and so does yours.
Exactly.
Because he was born in Hawaii.
Right.
His mother was born in Australia.
Right.
His father was born in Kenya.
Right.
And I said, there's something about that black soil in Kenya that produces brilliance. Because his father certainly was a brilliant person, and so was he. And by the way, our president was editor of the Harvard Law Review, okay? So there's a lot of history that's forgotten. Many of our young people are not educated about how their great-great-great-grandparents came to this continent. By the way, Christopher Columbus did not discover America.
Okay.
It was Americus Vespucius who came to the northern part of this continent. Yeah. And I sat on foreign affairs, and I very often had to educate my colleagues. It might be 30 or 40 of us. Mm-hmm. And they would say, well, when we were in Africa, and the way that you're called on to speak is when you put your mic up. So when it's your turn, then you can speak. And I would often say, my dear colleagues did not make it clear for me as to where you went on the continent of Africa. And did you know that Africa is 54 nation states, 175 different tribes, speaking 115 different languages, and very few speak Swahili. Okay. So when you say you're going to Africa, you must tell me what nation state.
Praise. I want to say, Senator, I really appreciate you coming on the air today. I look forward to the information that you've given to the people. And Senator and I go way back. And when I say way back, we're talking, I don't even know what the 90s is anymore, but I'm talking we went back a long time. And I remember sitting out there in Bud Calf Grant's office with her, and before she became ambassador of Micronesia, and all the different entities that she's went through helping in this community, and before she got even retired. You know, I was always wondering, where's Senator Diane Watson? What has happened with Senator? Well, right now she's she's retired. But at the same point of it is she's enjoying her retirement. I asked her to come on the program today as a special favor to me to be able to get some history, talk with somebody that I knew that started me in this a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate it, and I do appreciate having you on the air.
Well, you do a great job of explaining what the process is, and I'm here to assist you in that.
I appreciate it.
I've been through many different elected offices, elections, and for the last 35 years, all my adult life, It didn't allow me time to have a family, to be married and have a family, but it allows me now to be able to help my family. My older sister is deceased now, and I have 2 younger siblings, and they both are ill. So I'm the one that really is there to help my family move forward, and their children and their children's children, to know a little bit about who we are as a people, who we are as a race, and what is necessary to move into that middle class. So thank you so much for having me on the program.
And I hope that you will continue to look at the program, future people that we're going to be bringing on the air, certain things we want to educate you, and this is to be informed. And my name is Jerry Jones, and I am President and CEO of Mega International. I look forward to working with you. Give us a call at area code 310-337-1169. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
In God's time, 1,000,000 years might only be the same.